Each face in this video comes from a real fragment of history, a relief, inscription, or ancient manuscript. These are the men and women who once stood in Roman arenas, then rose to fight the empire itself. Through careful AI reconstruction, we've brought their images closer to life, drawing from historical records and artifacts to capture not just warriors, but human stories. This is Spartacus's army, reimagined, remembered, and made real again. This ancient Roman fresco, preserved in the Museo Archeologico Nazionale di Napoli, depicts a dramatic gladiatorial duel, one of the few surviving images believed to represent the world Spartacus once knew. Born in Thrace around 111 BCE, Spartacus was enslaved and trained as a Thraix gladiator, wielding a curved blade and small shield. But he became far more than a fighter in the arena. In 73 BCE, he led the largest slave uprising in Roman history, rallying tens of thousands of rebels against the might of the Republic. For 2 years, his army defeated legion after legion. Though ultimately defeated and killed in 71 BCE, Spartacus became a symbol of resistance and defiance, immortalized in history, and perhaps even in the worn pigments of this ancient wall. Crixus, a Gallic warrior turned gladiator, rose to fame not only in the arena, but also on the battlefield of rebellion. As a Murmillo fighter, he wore a heavy bronze helmet, like the one now preserved in the Museo dei Gladiatori in Capua, with a distinctive crest and grille protecting the face. Trained in brutal close combat, Crixus became one of Spartacus's most trusted commanders during the Great Slave Uprising of 73 BCE. Fierce and fearless, he led thousands of rebels into battle. In 72 BCE, he fell in a clash with the Roman legions of Quintus Arrius, but his courage and leadership made him a symbol of resistance that endured long after his death. Gannicus was a Celtic gladiator and one of the key commanders in the Great Slave Uprising alongside Spartacus. Famed for his unmatched agility and dual-wielding combat style, he is believed to have fought as a Dimachaeus, a class of gladiator wielding 2 swords with deadly precision. Plutarch, in his Life of Crassus, 11.2-3, describes how Gannicus and fellow rebel Castus broke off with a force of 30,000 men, only to be encircled and defeated by the Roman legions in 71 BCE. While no personal artifacts of Gannicus survive, his legacy lives on through reconstructions based on Celtic warrior traditions and the Dimachaeus archetype. His final stand in the Battle of Cantenna became a symbol of fearless resistance, a moment where defiance echoed louder than any defeat. Commodus, son of Marcus Aurelius, was no ordinary emperor. Obsessed with spectacle and glory, he descended into the Colosseum not as a spectator, but as a performer, wielding sword and spear before roaring crowds. He styled himself after Hercules, donning lion skins and wielding a club, not only in combat, but in sculpture, as seen in the famed bust from the British Museum. In this marble portrait, he is adorned with symbols of mythic strength, exalting himself as a living god. His reign, from 180 to 192 CE, marked the chaotic twilight of the Antonine dynasty. Though his rule collapsed in paranoia and assassination, his legacy endures as Rome's most infamous emperor gladiator, a ruler who blurred the lines between throne and arena. His name was FLAMMA, the Flame, Assyrian by birth, but forged in Roman sand. He entered the arena 34 times, survived them all, and won 21. 4 times he was offered freedom, and 4 times he refused. To him, the sand was home, and the roar of the crowd, his calling. His life ended not in disgrace, but in glory. Today, his tombstone stands in Sicily, etched with honor. FLAMMA Secutor lived 30 years, fought 34 times, won 21, drew 9, lost 4. In an empire of slaves and emperors, FLAMMA chose neither. He chose the arena. This ancient Roman glass beaker, now held at the Corning Museum of Glass, captures a vivid gladiatorial scene in delicate relief, a rare surviving object that may echo the brutal world of Spiculus. Dated to the 1st century CE, its surface depicts armored fighters mid-combat, their names once etched into the glass to preserve fleeting fame. Spiculus was no common warrior. Famed as the favorite gladiator of Emperor Nero, he fought as a murmillo, armed with a gladius, heavy shield, and crested helmet. His prowess in the arena earned him not just victory, but imperial favor. Nero is said to have gifted him wealth, land, and even palaces. Though few records survive, Spiculus stands out as a figure where spectacle and politics collided. A gladiator elevated to near-mythic status in the heart of imperial Rome. Perhaps his legend still lingers in the glass, where victory is frozen in motion. This vivid scene comes not from stone or bronze, but from verse, preserved in the poetry of Martial. In 80 CE, at the grand opening of the Colosseum, two gladiators, Priscus and Verus, faced each other in an epic duel. Blow after blow, they fought with equal skill and honor, refusing to yield. The crowd roared, and in a rare moment of mercy and spectacle, Emperor Titus awarded victory to both. They left the arena not as enemies, but as freed men, immortalized not in marble, but in poetry. This vivid moment survives not in sculpture or scroll, but in verse, etched in the words of the poet Martial. In the year 80 CE, as the Colosseum opened its gates for the first time, two warriors entered the arena, Priscus and Verus. They were equals in strength, in courage, in glory. Sword met shield, strike met strike, yet neither could best the other. The crowd held its breath. Then, in a gesture of honor as rare as the duel itself, Emperor Titus declared them both victorious. Two slaves became free men, not through conquest, but through mutual respect. And though time has taken their faces, their story lives, not in marble, but in poetry. Not all who fought in the arena were slaves. Marcus Attilius was a free-born Roman, a volunteer who chose the life of a gladiator. In Pompeii, scratched onto a plaster wall, a piece of graffiti tells his story. He faced Hilarius, a decorated veteran with 13 victories. Against all odds, Attilius won, a newcomer defeating a champion. The crowd must have roared. His name, carved into stone, echoes still, a citizen by birth, a fighter by choice. His legacy endures in a single scratch of history. His name survives not in marble or scroll, but in glass. TETRAITES, a murmillo gladiator of great renown, once defeated another famous fighter, Prudens. Their duel is not recorded in history books, but it was etched into a ceremonial glass cup, a rare relic that has survived the centuries. Today, that ancient vessel, cracked and golden, rests in the Metropolitan Museum of Art. The Latin inscription still reads their names, locked forever in combat. No poet praised his deeds, and no historian told his story. But through this humble object, TETRAITES lives on, remembered not for how he died, but for how he fought. CARPOPHORUS did not fight men, he faced nature's fury. In the arena, under roaring crowds, he brought down lions, bears, leopards, and bulls, 20 beasts in a single day. Martial, the Roman poet, praised him as mightier than Hercules, a man whose strength turned slaughter into spectacle. He wasn't born to kill, but he learned. No helmet, no swordplay, only a spear, instinct, and impossible courage. We have no sculpture of him, no painting, but his name survived in verse, his deeds echoing in dusty stanzas. CARPOPHORUS, the beast fighter who stepped into the jaws of death and walked out to thunderous applause. Hermes was not just a fighter, he was a master of every form. In the arena, he moved between styles like a dancer. One day, a murmillo with heavy shield and blade, the next, a secutor chasing down net wielders, then a retiarius himself, lashing out with trident and rope. The poet Martial called him unmatched, a man whose skill defied classification. He wasn't known for brute force or cruelty, but for precision, versatility, and elegance. His name meant messenger of the gods, and in the blood-stained sand, he lived up to it. Hermes, the gladiator who turned violence into art. This marble relief from the British Museum is one of the rare surviving depictions of female gladiators, and perhaps the only one with names carved into stone. Amazon and Achillia face each other in match stance, equipped as provocatores, wearing breastplates and wielding gladius and rectangular shields. According to the inscription, both women fought bravely and were granted freedom, a rare honor in the arena. Amazon, whose name evokes the legendary warrior women of myth, symbolizes the blurred line between spectacle and defiance in Roman entertainment. Her fight, preserved in this worn slab of stone, reminds us that even the blood-soaked sands of the amphitheater occasionally witness stories of emancipation. Through this relief, we see not just combat, but a woman who carved her name into history. This rare marble relief, preserved in the British Museum, shows two female gladiators in action, and one of them is Achillia. Carved in the 1st or 2nd century AD, the scene presents her facing Amazon in a formal duel, both equipped as provocatores with rectangular shields, breastplates, and short swords. Their names are carved above them, and the inscription declares that both earned their freedom, a remarkable fate for women in the Roman arena. Achillia's name evokes echoes of the legendary Greek hero Achilles, and like him, she stood armed and unyielding before the crowd. While her image is frozen in stone, the meaning behind it endures, a challenge to traditional roles and a symbol of courage under the brutal spectacle of Rome. Through this weathered fragment, Achillia fights not only for survival, but for memory. This engraved funerary relief commemorates Marcus Antonius Exicius, a gladiator of Alexandrian origin who rose to fame in the early 2nd century AD. The Latin inscription reveals that he fought in honor of Emperor Trajan and won his freedom after defeating a slave named Araxes. Originally from Egypt, Exicius was sent to Rome as part of a public spectacle, likely staged during Trajan's triumph. His image, depicted holding a palm branch, a symbol of victory, reflects both strength and dignity. The armor on his arm and the laurel wreath carved beside him emphasize his skill and valor. Above him, a griffin gazes down, adding mythic weight to his legacy. This stele, once displayed in a Roman necropolis, reminds us that even those born in bondage could, in rare cases, etch their names into history. This marble stele, carved in the 2nd century AD, tells the tragic story of Diodorus, a Roman gladiator whose fate was sealed not by his opponent, but by a judge's mistake. The relief shows the moment of his victory. His opponent lies wounded and defeated, yet Diodorus would not live to celebrate. The Latin inscription below the image is unusually candid. It accuses the referee of error, stating that Diodorus was killed unjustly after securing triumph. Such a public condemnation was rare in Roman funerary art, a testament to how deeply this injustice was felt. His armor marks him as a secutor, fighting with curved shield and sword, helmet tight to his face. Though his name might have vanished like so many others, this stone preserved his last act of honor and the failure of those who were meant to protect the rules. In death, Diodorus became both a victor and a victim. Born in the 3rd century AD, Shimon ben Lakish, also known as Resh Lakish, began his life in the Roman provinces not as a scholar, but as a gladiator. According to rabbinic tradition, he once fought wild beasts in the arena as a bestiarius, famed for his strength and fearlessness. But his story took a dramatic turn when he encountered Rabbi Yochanan, who recognized his potential beyond the blood and sand. Abandoning the arena, Resh Lakish immersed himself in Torah study, eventually becoming one of the most brilliant minds of the Talmud. His fiery debates with Rabbi Yochanan became legendary, shaping Jewish legal discourse for centuries. From sword to scripture, his transformation remains one of the most extraordinary in ancient history. Among the few Roman women recorded as gladiators, MEVIA stands out as a bestiarius, one who fought wild beasts. She is mentioned in Juvenal's Satire 6, where the poet mocks Roman women who abandon modesty for spectacle. MEVIA, with her breasts exposed, transfixes the Tuscan boar. Though meant as satire, this line confirms her presence in the arena, battling animals with a spear. Unlike provocatrices who fought other humans, bestiarii faced lions, boars, and other beasts, often with no armor. MEVIA's bare-chested image was shocking to Roman elites, yet she embodies a different reality, one of physical courage, defiance, and brutal spectacle. No statue or relief survives of her, but through a line of poetry, she pierces history like the boar she struck, a symbol of the empire's contradictions and the fearsome women who dared to defy them. Though no artifact of him survives, this imagined bronze relief honors Castus, a Celtic gladiator who rose from chains to command. Alongside Spartacus, he led the largest slave revolt in Roman history, a rebellion that shook the foundations of the Republic. Ancient sources place him as one of the key leaders of the insurgent army, possibly commanding the Celtic and Gallic divisions. In 71 BCE, near the final days of the uprising, Castus fell at the Battle of Cantenna, where rebel forces were overwhelmed by Roman legions. His legacy is shadowed by silence. No inscription or portrait remains, only the record of his defiance. This commemorative sculpture is a modern reconstruction, echoing Roman style, to evoke the memory of a forgotten warrior who dared to stand against empire. Like so many who fought and died nameless, Castus lives on through rebellion, not marble. Though no image of him survives, Oenomaus lives through the fury of rebellion. A Gallic gladiator and trainer in the school at Capua, he was among the first to rise, alongside Spartacus, in 73 BCE. More than a fighter, he was a teacher, shaping slaves into warriors, forging defiance from despair. Roman sources recall him not as a shadow in the crowd, but as a leader of men in the earliest battles of the uprising. In one of these clashes, Oenomaus fell, a death early in the war, but not in vain. His legacy echoes not in statues or reliefs, but in the fire he lit among the enslaved. This imagined manuscript illustration, styled after antique drawings, commemorates the rebel who trained others to fight and died so that they could.